So we just finished planting our carrots here at Vibrant Earth Seeds Farm and made this nice 75-foot bed for them. And we'd like to share with you how to form garden beds in the arid Southwest or other arid climates so that you can be successful with germination and watering. We hear a lot from folks that they're concerned that their seeds dried up and they're not getting good germination. Because we have such a dry climate, it's pretty easy to do. So we'd like to give you some tips today for how to make sure your seeds are staying nice and moist and how to make your garden beds for that reason. So you can see here that we have 3 different little beds, and each one of these beds has a double row of carrot seed planted. So to do that, first we started with something that looks a lot like you see here, a bunch of weeds and pasture overgrown stuff. And we rototilled that a couple of times with our small rototiller that we push by hand. And then we took a garden rake and raked out the clumps of grass and weeds out of that bed. And that did take a couple of hours for us to get all of the grass and clumps of weeds out of this bed that you see here. And after we did that, we had some nice fluffy soil to work with. And so one of the main goals is to create more of a raised platform of fluffy soil so that when you plant your seeds in there, there's room for the roots to move down into that fluffy soil and form really nice and strong. If you are trying to plant your seeds into more of like a hard pan soil, which means that it's like a tough soil or a really clay soil, then those roots aren't really gonna have those nice air pockets in the soil to form into. So you're gonna get really weak germination, or your plants aren't gonna be very strong. And then, so we basically started by forming these 3 beds from that nice fluffy soil. And then once we had them, it's about 1.5 or 2 inches tall, then we created a water channel down the middle of each of these 3 beds. You can kind of see it's maybe 1 inch deep channel for the water. And we also have water channels on either side of these 3 beds. And then we planted our seed on top of that. So we planted the seed by creating a little channel about 1/2 inch deep, maybe 1/4 inch deep, and sprinkling the carrot seeds in here. And for carrots, we have quite a bit of seed, so we're not too concerned. But if you have a very limited amount of carrot seed, you might try doing a couple per inch or a few per inch. And then we just barely covered the soil back up over those seeds. You can also use the back of a rake and kind of gently rake over your channel. And then we get to the step which is the watering. So we're gonna show you that now. And you can see that what we're basically trying to do is top water and bottom water. So we're going to bottom water in these channels between the beds and in the middle of each bed, either with your hose or flood irrigation if you have that kind of a system. And then in addition to that, we're going to top water using a sprayer or a sprinkler or hose, and you'll see that in just a second. So what we want to do is have the bottom water start to percolate into the bed and then wick upwards and then meet the water that's coming from the top and settling down. So when they meet in the middle, that's when you know that your entire bed is nice and gently saturated with the water, and that's going to ensure that your seeds have consistent water because they can wick it like it's coming up from the bottom and it's also settling down from the top. If you only do one of those 2 steps, let's say you just bottom water into these channels, then some of your seeds might be too elevated or they might not be in exactly the right spot to get that bottom water as it wicks up. And then if you just do like a sprinkler on top, then you might not get enough coverage, because since we're in the desert, a lot of that will evaporate right away, and you might not get it to settle all the way through your bed. So you really want to do this kind of sandwich effect where you're bottom watering and top watering, and that water is meeting in the middle to ensure that your entire bed is saturated. And for carrot seed in particular, it tends to be a trickier one to maintain that moisture while the seeds are germinating, because they're pretty slow to germinate, carrot seeds. And you want to make sure that every single day you're coming out to check to make sure that that bed, when you stick your finger all the way through the bed, that 1.5 or 2 inches, that you feel moisture all the way through. And if you don't, you're going to want to water again. Not so it's soupy or like super saturated, but just to make sure that at least those seeds are maintaining their moisture. And that will be about 2 to 3 weeks depending on your carrot seed. We've had carrot seed that took a full 3 weeks to germinate, and they were still completely fine. That's a pretty typical time. It also depends when in the season you plant them, so don't give up hope. So now we're starting to top water with the sprinkler hose, and this is going to allow the bottom water channels to connect with the water percolating down from the top and give us a nice evenish moistness for our seeds. Okay, so we top watered and bottom watered a single time, and you can see that since we're in the desert, if I dig my hand about an inch down, there's still soil in here, lighter in color, that is completely dry. And that is very typical of where we live. We're in southwestern Colorado. So we're going to want to top water multiple times, usually just 2. So he's going over 1 time with the sprayer hose, and then we're going to come back where we started from at the beginning and water a 2nd time once this first round has already settled in. And that's going to give us enough so that the bottom and the top water can meet in the middle. I think we'll just need to do it 1 more time. But really the only way you can tell is to stick your finger in there, because right now it looks completely saturated. But as soon as you do that test and dig in there, you can see that it's crumbly. So make sure to do a little investigation. Okay, so now we've watered from the top 2 times, and you can see a little bit of this pooling action happening, which is a good indication that we've achieved saturation. And I stuck my finger in here, and there's no dry, crumbly soil under the surface. So now we can be confident that our seeds are going to remain nice and moist while they're germinating. Another technique that you can use for larger seeds that you're not worried will wash away when you apply water in these channels, so that would be things like beans, peas, squash, you can actually plant the seeds directly into the water channels. So you're going to plant them about 3 times the diameter of the seed, that amount of depth. And you're going to plant them directly into this channel that you've created, and then cover them up gently before you water. And that way, when your water comes, it's going to soak directly into your seed. The only reason we have these elevated, nice and fluffy beds here on either side of the channel is because our carrot seed is so tiny and delicate, we don't want it to wash away. So try planting those larger seeds directly into the channels if you're in the desert and you're worried about evaporation and not maintaining that soil moisture. Plant them directly into the channels. Let us know how that goes.